What's up, YouTube? Ryan Panny here. Hope you guys are doing reasonably well. It is time for a review of the new Krisiun record, Scourge of the Enthroned, out this past Friday, September 7th. One of several extreme metal releases that I've been really looking forward to this fall. I mean, they're really starting to pile up already. Aborted, Pig Destroyer, now Nathrak, Revocation, Behemoth, Deicide, Windhand, Bloodbath, Disturbed. No, I'm just kidding about Disturbed, but it is just such a great time to be a fan of extreme metal, and I fully intend on covering a lot of those albums I just mentioned on this channel. So Krisiun, I would be so bold as to call one of Brazil's greatest contributions to metal music, period. I mean, my favorite Brazilian metal band is probably the power metal band Angra, who I've discussed on this channel before. Then obviously you gotta mention Sepultura, who are the most famous and most commercially successful Brazilian metal export. And then the band Sarcófago I'd probably throw in there just because of their undeniable influence on the black metal genre. And of course there's a member connection there with Sepultura, which is relevant. But then for my money, rounding out these four bands is Krisiun. I mean, Krisiun are nothing short of a household name in the death metal genre at this point. This new record, Scourge of the Enthroned, marks 11 proper studio albums for the band, over a quarter century of releasing music. I'd say the records that most got me into the band personally were their third one, Conquerors of Armageddon, which I think a lot of fans would cite as their most definitive statement, and then the very underrated Assassination, which came out in 2006, I believe, and that was the record they were promoting when I first got into them. Highly recommend both those records for any death metal fanatics watching who have somehow made the tragic mistake of overlooking them so far. Which, speaking of those two records, producer Andy Klassen, who produced both of those LPs as well as several in the Krisiun back catalog, is back behind the boards for this new record. Krisiun actually co-produced their last one, 2015's Forged in Fury, with Eric Rutan of Hate Eternal. And this is gonna sound a little weird, but when I listen to Scourge of the Enthroned now, I actually feel like it is a sonic step down from their last record. I'm realizing now that Eric Rutan, unsurprisingly given what he's done for bands like Cannibal Corpse in the second half of their career, as well as his own band, Hate Eternal, he helped make a fucking killer sounding Krisiun record with that last one. Because now 3 years later, here I am listening to Scourge of the Enthroned, and it doesn't quite have the same power to it. In particular, the drum sound is kind of annoying me. The snare on this one has a little bit too much crackle to it. The kick drum has that irritating clicky thing going on, which in retrospect, I mean, a record like Assassination also has that present, but context is everything. And now when I contrast this new one with Forged in Fury, which had a thick, muscular kick sound and a little bit of a drier production, I kind of miss that sound. Might have done Krisiun better to just stick with Eric Rutan. Still though, noticing a minor downgrade in production when listening to the singles, that was never going to be enough to deter me from being psyched on this record. And there were 3 singles released before it came out, and by far my favorite was Demonic 3, which by the way I think is also what the band refer to themselves as. But I just love that fucking skull-crushing stomp that kicks the track off with those harmonized tremolo guitars swarming around it. And thankfully this powerful opening theme is reprised halfway through the song, because otherwise I'd miss it and I would get separation anxiety from it. This track is also an excellent instrumental showcase too, with some wild drum fills. There's a shreddy guitar solo in the middle. There's even a little bass moment squeeze in there. And also the best part about this song is that it doesn't even climax, for my money, until the outro riff, which is the most intense riff on the track. And it's a riff that's made even more chaotic by the restless drums underneath it. It's such a way to send this track off. And all these sounds are intimately familiar for Krisiun fans. It's nothing new. One thing that I've always enjoyed about the band's music that they continue to do on this record is that Krisiun really find pleasure in the ugly with the note combinations and chords that they use. Like the best example on here is the killer penultimate track, Abysmal Misery, which uses just this hideous dissonant riff as the song's centerpiece. Also those blast sections on the opening title track, they're best described as gross at hyperspeed. And they just make you feel like you have insects crawling all over you. Yeah, this record is definitely ugly a lot of the time. And it's also super fast, with the guitars emphasizing these carpal tunnel inducing rhythms and drummer Max Kolesny hammering through blast beats that would make most drummers' limbs fall off. I will again cite the awesome title track as an example of this album's blistering speed that it can achieve, as well as the closing track, Whirlwind of Immortality, which is very technical, but is also the most dynamic and best song on this record. On Whirlwind of Immortality, I'm really impressed with how the band are able to effortlessly transition in and out of these very dramatic and catchy twin guitar slowdowns before just going right back into melting your face off. If I was a curator for Apple Music or Spotify, which I fucking hate that word, curator. It's very fucking pretentious. But if I was one of those people, Whirlwind of Immortality would be an absolute must for any death metal 2018 playlist. It's one of my favorite tracks I've heard from this genre all year. And I mentioned the twin guitars in that song. Krisiun definitely lean heavily on the 2-guitar attack all over Scourge of the Enthroned. If you're into that sound, look no further than the harmonized assaults of Devouring Faith or Slay the Prophet. Tossing harmonies on a lot of these otherwise pretty standard riffs, it feels like it's supposed to be the magic spice that all of a sudden makes them interesting. And it's kind of a crutch, but it works. I do have to say though, when listening to Scourge of the Enthroned back to back with any number of Krisiun albums, I can't point to any tangible signs of growth for the band. And when that's the case, I can't help but be harder on this record because it's preceded by a whole back catalog of records that I already enjoy. And you know, that being said, towards the middle of this LP, I really start to sour on some of these painfully repetitive guitar riffs. Like the song 1,000 Graves is the worst offender in this category. It's got this verse riff that just alternates between the same two notes over and over and over again. And then the thrashy groove that this riff transitions into is equally unexciting. And I find myself really disappointed when 3/4 of the way through this song, the band choose to revisit this uneventful 2-riff combination instead of taking the song anywhere else that could have been interesting. Slay the Prophet too. I mean, this song at least has some colorful stop-start rhythms, and that sudden epic slowdown towards the end is a high point of the album. But otherwise, the bulk of this song is consumed by this maddeningly repetitive riff that I grow sick of very, very fast. Devouring Faith and Electricide also suffer from some pretty recycled ideas, and Electricide in particular just feels so robotic in its execution, you know? That's the thing. This brutal death metal style that Krisiun plays, when not expanded upon enough, it can very, very quickly become soulless and emotionally one-dimensional. And that's just not my thing. The best comparison I can think of in recent memory is that last Morbid Angel record, Kingdoms Assailed. I wouldn't say Scourge of the Enthroned is quite as impenetrable as that one, but my same feelings apply. Morbid Angel didn't take enough chances, they had death metal tunnel vision in their songwriting, and as a result made a record that was very monotonous and very predictable. So sure, yeah, Scourge of the Enthroned is a principled, no-frills death metal release, but when you combine the lack of innovation with the back catalog that Krisiun already has, all it's going to take is a couple boring songs in the middle there for me to start to feel pretty indifferent, like I could get this anywhere else. And in terms of how this record fits in from a contemporary perspective, to use an example from last year that's essentially a direct peer to this record, Immolation's Atonement, which came out I think last February, that kind of sets the high bar for me for this style in this year, in this period of time, and Krisiun simply are not making death metal at that level. I wanted to be excited about this record. I certainly was excited going in, and my first few listens I was really pumped up, but the more I dug into this record, the more I found myself yearning for something a bit more adventurous, more multifaceted, and you know, if I ever were to have a very rare craving for this very specific, semi-outdated brutal death metal style, I've got a laundry list of records that I'd prefer over this one, a couple of them by Krisiun. So not a bad record by any means, but definitely not one that I'm going to revisit, aside from a few highlights that I've shared with you guys. Scourge of the Enthroned gets a 5 out of 10 from me. As always, thanks so much for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video and are not yet subscribed to my channel, please consider doing so by clicking right over here, or just checking out any of the other rock or metal related content that I publish on this channel on a weekly basis. Really appreciate you guys interacting, and just hit that like button, hit me on Twitter, Instagram, Quora, wherever the fuck I have a button with my face next to it. Hit me up on there. Can't wait to cover the rest of these great extreme metal records this year, and I will see you guys soon.